The salt stung my nose, sharp and briny, as I stood on the weathered porch of my beach house, the Pacific roaring like a restless beast below the cliffs. My hands gripped the splintered railing, the wood warm from the late afternoon sun. This was my sanctuary, my escape from a world that chewed up dreams and spat out regret. I'd bought this place 6 months ago, poured every dime of my savings into it after Mom passed. Her voice still echoing in my head. Find a place that feels like home. Ellie. This was it. 2 bedrooms, a sagging roof, and a view that made my heart ache with its beauty. But now, Karen Whitaker was trying to rip it away. She came at me like a storm surge, all bleach blonde hair and a clipboard clutched like a weapon. Karen, the HOA president, had been hounding me since I moved in. First, it was my mailbox too rustic. Then, my garden too wild. Now, she stood in my driveway, her heels clicking on the gravel, her voice slicing through the ocean's hum. Ellie, this property isn't yours, she declared, her lips pursed like she'd just bitten a lemon. My family owned this land decades ago. You're squatting on Whitaker land. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Squatting. The word hit like a slap. I'd signed the papers, paid the closing costs, cried tears of joy when I got the keys. That's insane, I said, my voice trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity. I have the deed. Karen, this is my house. Her eyes narrowed, cold as the fog rolling in. Deeds can be faked. My grandfather built this place. I've got proof. She waved a yellow document, the edges curling like dead leaves. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a power trip, this was personal. Karen had a vendetta, and I was her target. The next week was a blur of dread. Karen rallied the HOA, her voice dripping with fake concern at the community meeting. We can't have strangers stealing our heritage, she said, her eyes locking on mine as neighbors whispered. I sat in the back, my hands clammy, the fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. I'd always been the quiet one, the artist who kept to herself, sketching waves and driftwood in my notebook. But now, I was the outsider, the thief. I could feel their stares, heavy as wet sand. At home, I pored over my deed, the paper crisp under my fingers, the notary's seal gleaming like a shield. It was real. It had to be. But doubt crept in, slimy and cold, whispering in the dark, what if she's right? I barely slept, the ocean's roar now sounding like a warning. I called my lawyer, a guy named Tom who smelled like coffee and old books. Ellie, your title's clean, he said, his voice steady over the phone. But Karen's got influence. She's been in this town forever. Be careful. Careful wasn't enough. Karen escalated. She filed a claim with the county. Her proof, a faded letter from her grandfather, claiming the land was never sold. She plastered notices on my door, red ink screaming, eviction pending. My mailbox overflowed with anonymous letters, go back where you came from. The air in my house grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp wood and my own fear. I stopped sketching. The waves outside my window felt like they were closing in, ready to swallow me whole. Then came the stranger. I was in my kitchen, the kettle whistling like a distant scream, when a knock rattled the door. A man stood there, mid-40s, his flannel shirt rumpled, his eyes kind but tired. Name's Daniel, he said, his voice low, like he was afraid the wind would carry it away. I heard about your trouble with Karen. I used to know her family. He hesitated, his boots scuffing the porch. Can we talk? I let him in, my heart pounding. The kettle's steam curled around us as he sat at my table, his hands fidgeting with a frayed coaster. Karen's grandfather didn't build this house, he said, his words slow, deliberate. He lost it in a poker game in '72. My dad was there, saw it happen. The winner sold it to your seller's family. Karen's been lying to everyone. My breath hitched. A poker game. It sounded absurd, like something out of a bad movie. But Daniel's eyes held no deceit. He pulled out a photo, grainy and faded, showing a group of men around a card table, cigar smoke swirling like ghosts. That's my dad. He pointed. And that's Karen's grandfather, drunk and signing the deed away. My hands shook as I took the photo, the edges brittle under my fingers. This was Ida Lifeline. But Karen wasn't done. She caught wind of Daniel's visit, probably from one of her HOA spies. The next day, she stormed my porch again, this time with a lawyer in tow, a slick guy in a suit that screamed money. "You're done, Ellie," she spat, her voice sharp as broken glass. "This is theft, and I'll drag you through court until you're broke." Her lawyer smirked, his pen tapping his notepad like a metronome. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but all I could do was stand there, the ocean's roar drowning out my thoughts. That night, I sat on my couch, the photo from Daniel clutched in my hands. The house creaked around me, the wind rattling the windows like it was trying to get in. I thought of Mom, her laugh, her belief in fighting for what's yours. I wasn't giving up. Not to Karen. Not to anyone. I called Daniel. "I need more," I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. "Anything you can find." Daniel came through. He dug up records tax documents, old deeds, even a notarized statement from his father, written years ago, confirming the poker game. It wasn't airtight, but it was enough to cast doubt. Enough to fight. I spent hours at the county office. The clerk's perfume lavender and too strong mixing with the musty smell of old paper. I filed a counterclaim, my hands steady as I signed my name. This was my home. My fight. The hearing was set for a Friday. The courtroom small and stuffy, the air thick with tension. Karen sat across from me, her face a mask of confidence, her nails tapping the table like a countdown. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, flipped through our documents, her glasses glinting under the lights. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud as the waves crashing outside my house. Daniel was there, in the back, his flannel a quiet reassurance. My lawyer, Tom, stood beside me, his voice calm as he presented our case, the deed, the photo, the records. Karen's lawyer argued, his words polished but hollow. "My client's family has deep roots here," he said, gesturing to Karen, who nodded, her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. "This is about legacy." I wanted to laugh, but my throat was too tight. Legacy. This was about control, about Karen's need to win. Then it was my turn. I stood, my legs shaking, and walked to the stand. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the creak of a chair. I held up my deed, the paper trembling in my hands. "This is my home," I said, my voice breaking but strong. "I bought it with everything I had. I've got the records, the title, the truth. Karen's story, it's a lie." I set the deed down, my eyes locked on hers. She froze, her lips parted, her confidence crumbling like sandcastles at high tide. Daniel testified next, his voice steady as he recounted the poker game, the photo, his father's words. The judge's eyes narrowed as she studied the documents, her pen scratching notes. Karen's lawyer tried to object, but his voice faltered, like he knew the tide was turning. The room felt electric, the air heavy with anticipation. When the judge spoke, her voice was like a gavel. "Based on the evidence, the deed held by MS. Ellie Harper is valid. The claim by MS. Whitaker is dismissed." A gasp rippled through the room. Karen's face went white, her hands gripping the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, tears stinging my eyes. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold. I stood on the courthouse steps, the ocean's distant roar calling me home. Daniel approached, a small smile on his face. "You did it," he said. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. This wasn't just about a house. It was about standing up, about fighting for what's yours, about not letting someone like Karen steal your peace. Back at my beach house, I sat on the porch, the salt air cool against my skin. The waves crashed below, steady and eternal, like a promise kept. I picked up my sketchbook for the first time in weeks, my pencil moving across the page, capturing the curve of the horizon. Karen could try to take my home, but she couldn't take my fight. Not now. Not ever.